here we are,
Season 4.
episode 1, Chris's Corner. Welcome to small group. Maybe it's your first time, maybe you've been before. We're glad you're here. And we're kind of here to be, what'd you say, guides?
Yeah,
Hosts?
guides, catalysts for conversation.
Sparks
Yeah, exactly. Sparks.
for the conversational,
Get it
metaphorically,
rolling.
fire.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. We're also here with a lot of people, which isn't normal.
Can we show them?
We would love to
Is the
show.
wide rolling?
There it is right there.
Cut to the wide.
Yeah. So maybe we'll explain to you who these people are. Each small group is led by a pastor and a team of 5 people that play different roles for making small group happen. And these are the teams, which is really exciting. They're going to be journeying with you all year.
And it's pretty amazing. These individuals give their time because they care about you, and they care about the idea of making space all over the city of Vancouver and the cities around Vancouver for people to connect meaningfully with one another, to grow in their walk with God, and then to find ways to meaningfully serve together.
Mm-hmm. And so every week there's going to be a video like this that's going to initiate conversation based on the sermon that happened on Sunday.
Yeah, our goal would be to do a bit of a recap of the sermon, maybe share some things that are on the cutting room floor from the sermon preparation process. Didn't make the cut to Sunday. Yeah. And then to set the stage for conversation that would follow. And for me, it's really special because I have this memory of when I first started following Jesus. My youth pastor, Ben, would drive us to Langley where there was this awesome church service. And I remember really caring about wanting to follow God, but always kind of feeling like I didn't understand everything that was happening. And it wasn't that I didn't understand it as much as I just needed to process it. Hearing it said to me was one level, but it was the conversations on the drive home that I most remember with a few friends and with Ben. And that's where I got to work out and ask the question but what about this?
Yeah, so small group is a space to bring your questions and your doubts and your wonderings based on the Sunday message. And we don't assume that, you heard the message. That's partly why we would do a recap to give you something to engage with.
Yeah, and small groups are also for people at all stages in their journey. So in every small group, there'll be people who maybe wouldn't consider themselves followers of Jesus, but are open to the discussion, all the way through to people who maybe have been following Jesus for decades and maybe have lots to give away to others in the room.
Yeah.
So what just happened there, and I'm so glad that happened, is we're in a room, as you recall, cut to the wide, with a ton of people, and somebody's device went off. And I look, and it was Pastor Jeremy's device that went off. It wasn't just some random person, it was the person who organized this whole event.
Yeah, I'm also glad it happened because at that moment I had nothing to say.
I was totally lost.
And I froze. So right in the nick of time, Jer.
Well, let's transition to this week's conversation. You got to kick off, you and Daryl at different sites kicked off our series in the 10 Commandments. Yeah. And what do we need to know by way of recap to enter into some meaningful conversation about it?
Well, what's kind of funny is my son, who's 12 years old, he said to my wife recently, every time I open the Bible, I always feel led to one verse. I feel like the Spirit is always leading me to this one verse. And my wife was like, what verse is it? And he said, honor your father and mother. And I thought, it's great to know the Lord's on our side. 100%.
That's amazing.
And that is one of the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments is maybe the most influential moral code in the history of the world. And all throughout church history, theologians and pastors have used the 10 Commandments to catechize or to teach believers about the faith. And so we're spending 10 weeks as a community diving into their significance for our lives. And the reality is they're going to spark a lot of very interesting, very challenging, very practical conversations. And so this past Sunday, we just gave an introductory talk, and we gave some guidelines for how to understand the 10 Commandments. And I have 4 guidelines. Should I recap?
I want to hear all 4.
Guideline number 1, the 10 Commandments were not a means of salvation. They were a response to salvation. God had rescued Israel out of slavery in Egypt before he ever gave them.
Can I interrupt?
The commands already, yeah.
I just want to name the dynamic in the room because we're filming this before Sunday.
Yes.
It's going to be watched after Sunday.
It could be
and
different.
I felt a few keeners in the room like, oh, giddy up. I know exactly what's coming on Sunday. It was like this is like the teaser for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe you're losing a bit of the punchline, a bit of the...
Yeah, I can go on to the second guideline. That was the first
Sorry to interrupt.
The second guideline is that the 10 Commandments are about imaging God to creation. And so it's about like this human vocation to image God's character, that the 10 Commandments are a reflection of God's character. And when we obey them, we image his likeness to creation. And so one of the 10 Commandments is don't bear false witness. Well, God always tells the truth. Don't commit adultery because God is always faithful. Sabbath, because God rested on the seventh day. Have no other gods before him because God himself has no other gods before him. And so when we obey these commands, we're fulfilling our vocation as his image bearers to the rest of creation. That was guideline 2 or thought 2.
I love that because it's this, I always feel so struck that God would entrust that to us. You know, the gift of bearing his image to, and often feel like I don't always do that well. And that's where I think it's so powerful to experience the invitation of the 10 Commandments through the lens of the finished work of Jesus.
Yeah.
So when I don't image him well, I've got a means of grace.
Yeah.
And so then I'm re-invited into it again and again.
And without knowing, you're anticipating guideline 3.
Number 3, hit me.
We don't keep the commandments. And so what's amazing about the 10 Commandments is as you study them, you realize if we followed them, most of the world's problems would disappear overnight. And so the laws, the rules, the commands are good and are recognized as good by many different people from many different worldviews. But the reality is we don't follow the commands. And so if the commands are good and we don't follow them, what does that make us? You know, fallen, missing the mark, sinful, broken, whatever language you would want to use. And the reality is the law comes in, or the 10 Commandments come in, and they act as a hammer to shatter our sense of self-righteousness and self-sufficiency. The law doesn't save us. It shows us we need saving. The commands don't heal us. They reveal us. And then they push us to Jesus, who does rescue us, who does save us, who does perfectly fulfill the law in our place and then die on our behalf, bearing the curse that we deserve for our sin on the cross so that we could be made new. And so, you know, when you read the Bible, sometimes you're just hearing about things you're not doing, and it's easy to stew in that shame and that guilt. It's like camping at Sinai, you know, camping at the place where the 10 Commandments were given. And we can't camp there. They need to push us to the cross and the finished work of Jesus. And so I really think when you study the 10 Commandments and you let them do work on your soul and convict you, you come to a fuller appreciation and realization of how beautiful the gospel is and how beautiful Jesus is. And so we should all come out of it, I hope, loving Jesus a whole lot more. And then the last point, guideline, thought was that God promises to write the law in our hearts, that he gives us power through his Holy Spirit to obey the law and to become new people over time. And so that's kind of like a recap of this introduction to the 10 Commandments.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. And now's the time where we get to throw it to you to discuss, to ask the what else type questions, or how do you see it, or how do you experience that? And I think the gift of the 10 Commandments for our small group discussions, if you look through them, they map over so many spheres of life. Family, God, work, all these things, like it maps. And so the next 10 weeks together in small groups are going to be a great avenue to get to know each other well, to learn more about each other, and to explore meaningful things. And so we want to throw it to you and your team to have these discussions together. Thanks for being with us. Tons of love from Chris, Jason, and the whole team. Cue the music, cut to the wide, cut back to us, back to the wide, back to us. See ya.